And trauma-informed practice was something that was developed by the NHS, by NHS education people, and it was informed by psychologists. I think it was funded by the Scottish Government, and there was a recognition that people who had survived trauma needed a slightly different approach. And so this framework was developed called trauma-informed practice, and there is lots of resources available out there. Training can be delivered to organisations. I do some of it myself as well, because I think it's really important that people know this stuff. And really, trauma-informed practice for me, and just how I sort of saw the development of this, came out of our understanding of ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. So that was a report that was conducted by a research scientist called Vincent Felitti. And he recognized that there were several risk factors for various health conditions based on various childhood sort of experiences. So you would there was an idea that you would get an ACE score, and this would maybe help to identify areas of risk when you grow up, for example, maybe heart conditions or diabetes or addiction, you know, your proclivity for addiction, etc. It's a bit outdated, and trauma-informed practice seems to have sort of overtaken our understanding of ACEs. But just to give you some background about where that language came from, and to bear in mind that I think there are some people who like ACEs, there are some people who like trauma-informed practice, and I think both are helpful in helping us to understand how to best care for our children. So the core principles of trauma-informed practice are safety, trust, empowerment, choice, and collaboration. Now, the reason, it was going to take a very long time to go through all of these, and it would be a whole training session. So I chose one because I thought, and I tried to think about which one was most important to the talk that I was giving to you today. And I wanted to talk to you about choice, because as a sort of tangible thing that you can do as a foster carer, I felt giving choice to children was probably one of the more dynamic things that you could do to help foster kids and to help kids who are traumatized. And choice also feeds into collaboration as well, because by giving choice, you're also offering the opportunity to collaborate with children. And that's kind of a paradigm shift away from how we commonly understand child reading. We say there's often a top-down understanding of parenting, that parents sort of tell children what to do and children do it. There's a sort of hierarchy there. I would argue that with foster kids, it should be a much more collaborative approach to parenting. And I would say that there's an immediacy and a much greater need for us to understand the need to collaborate with traumatized children, because that actually helps them to feel safe. So actually choice, collaboration circles back into feeling safe. If you give children choices and collaborate with them, they will feel safe in relationship with you, because their trauma happened in relationship. So Dr. Karen Treisman, I don't know if any of you heard of her, but she's quite a big person in the psychology world. She says that actually trauma healing occurs in relationship. So a lot of trauma, especially for traumatized kids, happened in relationship. So the solution to trauma also lies in relationship, and it's about safety, and it's about collaboration, and it's about choice. So giving choices helps to reestablish a sense of control over one's life. Offers of choice help to reduce power differentials, promoting a sense among foster children that they are being treated with respect. I alluded to that earlier in what I said. You know, I was talking about that sense of feeling safe, feeling respected, and that power differential as well. And I alluded to that when I was talking about sort of traditional child reading practices, where we would talk about that command and control, that hierarchical sort of parent-child relationship. Whereas with children who are traumatized, children coming through the foster care system, immediately we start to see a shift in a power dynamic, and it's subtle. And if you didn't know about it, you wouldn't be able to maybe tell. But there is a power dynamic, and it shifts to one where the person who has been traumatized will revert to fear-based ways of being, and will then, so to give you an example of my life, so when I go into fear, I can go into flight, fight, or freeze, or fawn. Fawn is a very little disgust reaction to trauma and fear, and fawn tends to be quite a coping mechanism for people who've been traumatized to gain the approval of adults. But what that actually does is it gives children, give away their power. So actually, trauma-informed practice, giving choice, collaborating, empowers children in a way that often their trauma has disempowered them. So we want to empower children and young people by offering them choices. And the reason I'm saying that is because this is an area where I think, as growing up, that could have been done better. I wasn't given choices, I wasn't empowered, and I had to learn that stuff as an adult. But if we can teach our children this stuff, it's going to help in the long term. I'm 29, and only now do I feel capable of being at university because I didn't have I wasn't empowered. I didn't know what my capabilities were, and I was just treated like the difficult adopted person who was struggling to cope. But actually, what I've learned is that had an adult just come along and empowered me and taught me about choices and making safe choices and collaborating with me and helping me to negotiate life, then my outcomes might have been a lot better, a lot sooner. 5 things that children want. So the first one was an ordinary family life and not to feel different. And sometimes it can be difficult to square that sense of this child is in foster care, they are inherently different, but also trying to keep things normal as well. That I understand the tension that exists there, and that's not easy. But I think it's about recognizing that the onus is on us as adults to meet those needs. The onus is not on the child to do that. To maintain relations with their birth families, that seemed like quite a big one. And I think often that comes back to stigma. I think also the system can often be quite risk averse as well. It doesn't particularly want birth families necessarily to be involved if it were to feel that that would be unsafe for the child. And I get that, children's safety is paramount, but children are telling us they want to maintain relations with their birth families. So it's up to us as adults to figure out how we do that safely. They want to understand why they're in care and to have an explanation ready. And I would argue, just through my own experience, like I was told, why can't I see my mum? Because she's sick. Okay, and she's not well. So a lot of the language was couched, but what everybody failed to remember was that I'd seen my mum drunk so many times. There was no need to protect me from the reality of that because I'd witnessed it. I'd seen it, the damage was done. I'm not saying that, I'm saying we should use age appropriate language to talk about difficult stuff, and actually talking about my mum's relationship with alcohol can be made age appropriate. If we refuse to tell children the truth in an age appropriate way, what we're doing is denying them the truth. We're denying them their identity, their heritage, the legacy they have. They experienced it, and we should trust children to be able to fully grasp in an age appropriate way what happened to them. Children want to be listened to about where they want to be and to have an element of control. So that comes back to choice. When we give children choice, they feel that they have control over their own lives. And we're not saying you can have all the control, but it's about sensible control. It's about manageable control. They said that they wanted to be valued, respected, and encouraged, for example, at school, and to be appreciated for themselves. I think often, and it's been my experience, we are so caught up in wanting to have the best for our children that sometimes we forget that they just need to be. Sometimes children just need to be, and they don't need to be the foster kid. They don't need to be different. They don't need to be traumatized. They just need to be, and we need to leave them to do that. and their brains are exhausted. You know, traumatized children brains work a lot harder than most, and we need to remember that. We often forget how much energy it takes just to survive sometimes. So I would say it's really important for children just to be. So what does giving choices look like in practice? So these were some things, again, from the Social Care Institute of Excellence that I pulled. I won't go through all of them because there's quite a lot here, but again, if you look at the first one, ask your foster child and yourself if they're being made to feel different and how you can overcome this together. Again, we see there an example of collaboration, you know, and an example of choice. So you're asking them to tell you, or if they want to tell you something, and then offering to collaborate with them to work through that together. You know, and that's a very different way to the way I was brought up, which was you just need to do that, you know, which is a very blunt instrument. It doesn't engage me in any way. It doesn't inspire creativity. It doesn't inspire problem solving skills. And actually, in some ways, there's some stuff here that would, you know, all parents could benefit from, actually, never mind just foster parents. But so I'll pick another one. So ask yourself how you can help children feel listened to, empowered, and in control of their own lives. Ask them the same questions too. So again, what we're starting to see here is that self-reflection informing the way that we parent, because we're asking ourselves the difficult questions. And through asking ourselves those questions, we're able to bring that to our relationship with the children that we're looking after. And actually, what we start to see is children who are being empowered, who are feeling a sense of control. We're giving them choices. We're collaborating with them. And that is the beginnings of trauma-informed practice. And that is, it takes a shift in mindset. It does take a shift in mindset. But I think once we start to do that, we will start to see children who feel safe. We start to see children who feel empowered, who feel in control of their own lives, and who are able to negotiate relationships in a way that they maybe haven't been able to do so before. I want to talk about this last point. Find out whether the foster children you are working with feel valued, respected, and loved, and think about what you can do to promote these positive feelings. So on a very basic level, as a child who was abused, I did not feel loved. I did not feel respected. So building relationships with people and trusting that I would was really difficult, because my starting point was not one of love and affection. It was one of fear. You know, my starting point was relationships are fearful. Relationships end. I will be taken out of this relationship and my sense of control will be removed. That was my starting point in life. So you move to a foster placement and you're not ready to handle some of the relationships that are there. So we need to recognize that we are fostering children who have not been valued. They have not been respected. And I would argue they have been loved, but often that love hasn't been shown, you know, or demonstrated in the way that we would hope. And the reason I say that is because I don't think children who go into foster placements, I don't believe there's ever a lack of love. I don't think any parent could not love their child. I just think that sometimes that love can be misplaced. Sometimes it's not shown in the ways that we would hope. But I don't think we have the right to take birth parents' ability to love away from them. And that's why I'm quite careful about the language that I use around that. But children who have experienced trauma have not had these positive feelings from their birth parents. And it's up to us as adults and foster parents, teachers, everyone involved in a child's life to promote these positive feelings. But bearing in mind, they might not react very well to that to begin with. We need to, you know, expose them to that gently, because oftentimes that will be really overwhelming. So, you know, recognizing that, yes, we do need to do all of that, but recognize that how overwhelming that might be for a child at that time. I think often in the social work world, we often get caught up in the adults. And I think we need to get better at listening to children. we have a phrase in the vernacular which goes, out of the mouth of babes, which we often use to say that children speak the truth. And I don't think we put that into practice enough. I think we need to learn to apply the innocence of childhood in our decision making around how we rear children.